when growing tomatoes, sometimes there can be problems with lots of different diseases and other maladies that might affect them. And so while we're here, we're going to talk about some that you might actually be seeing in your own garden. And with us is Dr. John Damicone. He's an extension plant pathologist with OSU. And Dr. Damicone, you're just going to explain some of the things people may be seeing for us? Great.
Yeah. Brenda, this is a virus disease we have here is tomato spotted wilt virus. It's one of the most severe diseases that a tomato grower could get. It's a virus that is spread by thrips, and the thrips feeds on the tomato foliage and injects a virus, and the virus multiplies in the plant, moves to the growing points, and you get this bronzing on the leaves, and the terminal growth will cease. And it also affects the marketability of the tomatoes. They'll be off flavor, off color, and it's a severe problem in some parts of the country. And in southeast Oklahoma a year or two ago, and in Arkansas this past year, the southeastern states have a severe problem with this, where it's almost impossible some years to grow tomatoes. But in this field, it's just an oddity. But it's a good thing to point out to show tomato growers what some of the problems they can have.
Now, if a person had this in their own tomatoes, what could they do about it?
There's very little that a tomato grower could do. You would think that spraying for the thrips would control it, but in reality the thrips can infect the plant before any kind of insecticide would kill the thrips.
Okay.
So the best thing a grower could do if they saw this kind of stunting or any kind of virus type symptoms where the growing point is twisted and deformed is to pull that plant out of the field so it's not available for insects to feed on and spread to other plants.
Okay. Now, just right on over here, we've got another problem, and not all problems are necessarily a disease, are they?
Some are caused by the environment or just weather conditions, and of course we've had unusual weather conditions this spring. And this is tomato leaf roll.
And right here's a good example
Here's
of
a good example right here. And this is caused by excess soil moisture. The leaves will curl up and turn leathery. And it seems that some varieties are more susceptible to this problem, but it's really cosmetic because the fruit aren't affected, and it just gives a funny appearance to the plant. But that's what we call a physiological disorder. It's not really caused by a virus or a bacteria or a fungus.
So it's not really anything to worry about either.
It's not.
Well, that's always good to know. Now on down here we've got something that's a little bit worse. Oh, this plant does not look good.
No, it doesn't. This is another severe disorder of tomatoes. It's called psyllid yellows. And it looks like a virus disease. It looks something like the spotted wilt virus, in that many of your viruses will cause the leaves to be twisted and deformed, and they won't set much fruit. But this is actually caused by a small insect called a psyllid, which feeds on the plant and injects a toxin into the plant, which stunts the plant, causes the leaves to roll up and the veins to get purple, and this tomato will not produce any fruit. It's again, it's an oddity in this field. It hasn't severely affected the yield, but it's still a severe problem. There's a grower outside Oklahoma City that has about maybe 5% of this in his field, so it can reach economic levels, but usually it's just a plant here or there.
Okay. Now, we've been talking so far about things that affect the leaves, things you would see on the leaves, but there are also things that affect the actual tomato fruit.
Right. And I have a couple examples of these. One is this cat facing, and this is again, a physiological disorder caused by environmental conditions. When the flower produces a pistil, it gets pollinated and then the fruit's formed. If the temperature drops below about 58 degrees during that period, there's damage to that pistil. That's the female part of the flower, and the resulting fruit will have this cat facing, and that's called cat face injury. Normally, this will appear on the first 1 or 2 pickings. This spring we had some cool temperatures during flowering that got down into the 50s here on the research station, so we're seeing the result of that in some of these first pickings. We see this cat facing. Another problem that occurs on tomatoes is bacterial diseases, and these will spot the fruit. This particular disease here is bacterial speck. Another more common disease we have here is bacterial spot, although I couldn't find any of those on the fruit. And these small spots, they're really just superficial, but when they get severe, it'll deform the entire fruit. And that's actually caused by a bacteria that infects both the leaves and the fruit.
Now, what could you do to prevent that?
Bacterial disease control usually involves trying to ensure that the seed you plant's free from bacteria, the transplants you plant are free from bacteria, which is very hard for a residential gardener to deal with. So, because you can never be sure these bacteria actually be on the surface of leaves and there won't be any symptoms, and then you'll plant them in the field, and when the conditions get right, you'll get the spots on the fruit or on the leaves. Mainly we rely on copper sprays, with Cocide being a brand name, Copper Count N is another brand name. A really old fungicide or bactericide that's been used for over 100 years is Bordeaux mixture. It's a mixture of lime and copper sulfate. Copper containing sprays are fairly effective if they're started early. They have to be started on a weekly program, beginning about at flowering and then repeated just about every week. Okay. And in years as wet as we've had this year, they're very difficult to control.
Okay. Well, we've got one more to look at. Let's go take it. Now, this is actually one of your trials here?
This is a spray trial where we're trying to control some of these foliar diseases, both bacterial and fungal. And this is one of our unsprayed plots that has either bacterial spot or speck. I can't be sure by looking at the symptoms, but the spots on the leaves, which eventually turn yellow and fall off. This hasn't been sprayed with any fungicides or bactericides, and I would have expected with more rain that the disease would be more severe than it is, but some of the visitors that have come to the field day today have had lots of samples of foliar diseases on tomatoes. Another common one is septorial leaf spot. So we have bacterial spot, bacterial speck, septorial leaf spot, and they all look fairly similar and do the same things. They'll turn the leaves yellow, and they will expose fruit to sun scald. The bacterial diseases will cause this spotting on the fruit, which blemishes the fruit. The septoria, the fungus, just gets on the leaves. It doesn't attack the fruit. But it's a common problem with, particularly with residential gardens, where in wet years all the lower leaves will fall off, and it'll reduce the productivity of the tomato plant. Okay.
Now here you've got a very clean looking row.
Now here we sprayed with Bordeaux mixture, and this is an old bactericide and fungicide that was developed in the 1800s. It's considered organic for those interested in organic production, and we've gotten pretty good disease control with this material. You can see that there's very few spots on the leaves. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to show a yield difference and a benefit to using these materials. We wish that there were some resistant varieties that the folks could grow, but as yet we don't have any resistance to those major foliar diseases.
Okay. We appreciate that, and I'm sure the people at home appreciate learning what may be wrong with their tomatoes. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.